Hey everyone, this is David Pike, the Motorcity mechanic. Now in today's video I want to give you some quick tips to pay attention to if you ever have to do valve covers on a Chrysler 3.8 liter. You'll find it in the Jeep Wrangler and any of the Dodge and Chrysler minivans. So make sure to pay attention because it might save you some time and aggravation. Now the 3.8 liter was a common V6 that Chrysler used for many years. Still had the cam and block design with push rods. So it was an old dinosaur style type setup. Now of course with emissions and all that kind of killed it over the years. Now it's known for having certain oil leaks, one of them being the oil pan gasket, another being the valve cover gaskets. Now that's what we're going to be talking about, because if you ever have to replace the valve cover gaskets, I want you to pay attention to something, because it may start out being a simple procedure or a simple job and then turn into something that's going to be a little more costly if you don't pay attention, which means you might be doing it twice. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this video, because there's some issues with these valve covers, and it's not necessarily the covers themselves, but more like where they're located. And it's got a lot to do with the heat coming off the exhaust manifolds. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and show you a few of them that I've got laid out, and we'll go in a little more detail. And this is what the valve covers look like on a Chrysler 3.8 liter. These have been replaced over the last year. Now it doesn't matter again if it's a Jeep Wrangler or a Caravan, they're all basically the same. Now the location on the engine will be different depending on what vehicle. One side will have the PCV valve right here, the other will have a plastic nipple for a crankcase hose and the oil filler cap. Now they are made out of plastic, which is common on all modern day engines, and they use a rubber seal. It's not an actual gasket, but just for the sake of argument, you're probably going to hear me say gasket over and over. Now looking at the valve cover up close, I want you to pay attention to some important details. There is a longer side and a shorter side. The longer side is the side closest to the intake. The shorter side is closest to the exhaust. Remember that, because that's very important. Now there is a rubber seal along the bottom edge. It just sits in a groove. Usually you can pull these up pretty easy. The bolts will want to fall out as you're doing this. These bolts also have a rubber grommet on there. So if you're doing the valve cover gasket, I recommend replacing the rubber grommet as well. Now along the top edge, that's closer to the intake, it's usually not too big a problem getting these off. And again, those bolts will fall out as you go around. Where you run into an issue is along the bottom side, because this side is nice and soft and still flexible, and you're wondering, why am I replacing it? The bottom edge starts to dry out and become rock hard. And the reason why it dries out is because the exhaust manifold is literally maybe 1/4 of an inch away from the plastic valve cover. So over a short period of time that's not an issue, but you get a car that's got 80,000, 90,000, 100,000 miles, that heat will start causing problems. Now, okay, so what? It dries out the seal. All right, we're replacing it anyway, right? Well, that's only part of the problem. Again, as you watch me try to take these off, this is where it starts getting harder and harder, and typically it wants to break. That's the side closest to the exhaust. Remember that. So again, getting those off can be tricky. There's a lot of having to try to clean out the passages too, because it will stick there. So it made that seal rock hard and we're replacing it. Cool. But there's something else you need to pay attention to. Not only does it dry out the seal, it damages the valve cover. So when you remove those rubber seals, I want you to kind of stop there and I want you to do a visual inspection on the valve cover before you even worry about replacing the grommets on the bolts. That bottom edge, remember, the one closest to the exhaust that we talked about? These two bolts, it's very important to pay attention to where they come out on the back side of the valve cover. Now you'll see possibly around the bottom edge where it might look like some kind of buildup, some kind of carbon, dirt, melted something. Well, it's melted, yes. That's actually part of the valve cover that's slightly melted. This one doesn't look to be too bad here, but if you get a little closer to this one, you'll actually see there's distortion. That plastic doesn't look nice and uniform. Now you think, okay, I could just clean that up and that'd be fine, maybe chip it away, or better yet, leave it alone. I'll put new gaskets on and new grommets on the bolts. Yes, that sounds fine. I've done that a few times. But those few times, you're sitting right here in front of you. Mainly because what happens is, and you may not see it too well on this one. This one don't have the bolts or the gaskets in there. But if you look real close to like right here, we'll move it around, maybe you'll start seeing something. There's a crack. And that's what happens. You'll replace the rubber seal. You'll replace the rubber grommets. You will install the valve cover. As you are tightening up the bolts, you will hear an audible snap. That snap is the valve cover cracking. And that crack right there is going to eventually cause you an oil leak. It's all because, again, the heat from the manifold distorts the valve cover and actually melts it in certain places. And here's another one of them. I just want you to see as many as you can so you might be able to see a good view of that plastic. This gasket's still stuck in here. That one was not wanting to come out. That's when I started noticing right here at this edge. These are pretty flat, kind of uniform all the way across. This one right here, it's not. You can actually hear the plastic breaking off just by rubbing my finger across it. That's going to crack going back. So if you come across the same kind of damage that I showed you on these valve covers, what are your options? Well, as far as replacements, pretty much the only place you're going to get valve covers is through Mopar or one of your local dealerships or somewhere online selling the Mopar branded ones. There's no one really in the aftermarket world that really caters to 3.8 liter valve covers. None that I have found. Doesn't mean that there's not some out there, but when I searched, nothing came up. Now when you order the valve covers, they will come with the valve cover gaskets and the grommets for the bolts. And if it's got a PCV valve and that's the side you ordered, it's going to come with the PCV valve. So they will come somewhat complete. It won't come with the oil filler cap for the opposite side. So again, you won't need to buy any more gaskets because it's going to come with them. So keep that in mind. So if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up on YouTube. Don't forget you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. If you have any comments or suggestions about anything you saw in today's video on the valve covers for the 3.8, make sure to leave something in the comments below. Also, if you shop on Amazon, which everybody does, scroll down in that description right at the bottom of this video. There's an Amazon link. Make that your home page, and anytime you buy anything on Amazon, you will be helping to support this channel. Once again, everybody, thanks for watching.